The evolution of P4, the mission. The mission is for the people's public-private sector's economic policy, which will include the entire labor force to become involved in governance for inclusive growth and development. Vision. Vision of P4 is to eviscerate the paradox of the enormous resources sitting side by side abject poverty in our societies through a digitally inclusive cyber culture. It is true that most democratic countries around the world operate the public and private sector's economic policy. This is a policy which engages government officials and business executives to work together in order to implement the projects. Citizens who occupy the job spaces in those two sectors constitute a significant few. In Nigeria, the executive arm of government is the highest employer of labor, followed by the private sector. Then, the question is, who employs the rest of the citizens? For some decades now, diaspora remittances into Nigeria on yearly basis equals the budget of the Federation. This is probably how the majority of the ordinary people survive. This limitation on its own is consequent to the unhealthy economic position of most Nigerians who live outside the country. If the people's sector becomes included in governance, they will have sustainable living and can be equitably independent. Our collective concern should now be how we can achieve all this. First of all, to legalize the concept, we need to submit a bill for the P4 policy at the National Assembly so that it can become an act. Then, next thing is for the I-code methodology to become the operating system for conducting the human and machine procedural agenda for the organizing of citizens and their immediate communities by the use of its metrics. Therefore, citizens have to form a common front and demand for their inclusion into the national strategy. This is the time we need to clearly identify the fact that so far we have had two economic tribes in Nigeria, namely the rich and the poor tribes, whereby the majority of the poor citizens belong to the informal sector, which is the people's sector. The earlier the ordinary man begins to appreciate the fact that those citizens who are employed by the public and private sectors belong to the rich tribe, the better for them or the ordinary citizen to join in the P4 revolution. The three arms of government are currently designed to create and implement budgets for themselves, and as a matter of fact, share the national equity with the private sector's institutions. So, how then does the ordinary man survive is the question here. Who is meant to support the rest of the citizens? 2080 Pareto law does not even fly here, since we have less than 10% of Nigerian citizens who are gainfully employed. Meanwhile, over 90% of citizens who form the informal economy belongs to the critical mass of the society. This section of the society has been neglected for so long, but it has become so critical to open up this chapter of our development. In most countries, The ordinary citizen is cared for by their governments through social welfare assistance programs. But in Nigeria, there is no such program. And I have to be lucid about this. So, what do we do? So far, this is an aspect of governance which has been downplayed by the promoters of democracy. Time has come for the ordinary man to emancipate from this particular blind spot which had overwhelmed our entire society for so long and take responsibility for self-survival through the P4 policy. The non-recognition of the fact that the critical mass is constituted under the umbrella of the people's sector is indeed an anomaly, even as the whole thing seemingly appears like this sector does not exist in the budget plan. Is it not yet time to constructively engage this sector on participatory governance for nation building? However, we are in the digital age. Therefore, this is not the time to march on the streets of Nigeria at all times in demand for the implementation of government policies. In the process of exploring the potentials of our demand for the P4 policy, it is important to note that it's safer to employ the utilization of citizens' journalism in the cyberspace.